Hello and welcome to Perspectives, where we take a deep dive into the issues of the day and where we take a look at people's opinion on such issues. I am Ruth Osime. Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Medical negligence carries heavy emotional consequences for families and patients, often leaving behind unanswered questions and loss of trust when care goes wrong. Accountability is essential, not only to secure justice for affected families, but to also restore confidence in the healthcare system. Understanding the legal framework helps clarify where responsibilities lie and how rights can be protected. Today, two experienced lawyers will walk us through how the law defines medical negligence, how to distinguish it from unavoidable medical outcomes, and the legal options available to families seeking redress. This conversation highlights the role of transparency, due process, and accountability in improving standards of care and rebuilding public trust in our hospitals. We're heading for a short break, but stay with us because in a brief moment, we shall begin to focus on the day's subject matter with two learned gentlemen, Otumba Laolu Osanyin and Collins Okeke. Perspectives will return in just a moment. Welcome back to Perspectives here on Arise News. Now I'm being joined on Perspectives today by Otumba Laolu Osanyin, an internationally renowned medical consultant and vice president of the World Association for Medical Law. He's also the first African on the association's board of governors. Laolu Osanyin is a senior partner at First Counsel Solicitors, lectures at the University of Medical Sciences, Ondo State, and is founder of the Nigerian Medical Law Summit, with over 20 years' experience in legal and medical law practice. Joining us as well is Collins Okeke, a partner at Olisa Agbakoba Legal, heading the Governance Advisory Practice Group. Collins Okeke advises governments, private clients, and international organizations on policy, regulation, and institutional reform across key sectors, including health, finance, energy, and environmental justice. Great to have you both here with me on Perspectives this morning.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
Well, let's take a quick listen to the woman speaking on the following clip for a proper grounding to the conversation on medical negligence.
What is happening in this country? We are talking about bandits, talking about the economy, now talking about doctors. I was at General Hospital the other day fighting doctors practically because of what they did to a patient. They almost killed that patient. Imagine a patient whose BP was very high and they still induced her and removed her teeth. That made her so sick that they spent so much money on that. Now today is my own mother. You can see my face. We couldn't sleep last night. She was treated what she was not supposed to be treated. This country is something else now. They will pick out, select the best doctors and take them abroad. Then leaving us with quacks. As I speak, I am in the car taking my mom to the hospital for another resuscitation. How long are we going to take this? No food, no money, no good education, no good treatment. Are we going to fold our hands? How long are we going to fold our hands? Government, please sit up, sit up. Sit up and screen doctors for us, for crying out loud. You people should stop featuring the best doctors and taking them abroad. They're flying there to go and take your own treatment. I am not happy. Nigeria, I am not happy. Government, I am not happy. Please share this video. Share this video. Let it reach the necessary authorities. I am tired. Does that mean those that cannot fly out to base abroad cannot survive in this country? This is getting out of hand. Please share, like, and comment for others to see.
This is a very harrowing video to listen to, and this is the reflection of the average Nigerian who doesn't have the luxury of going abroad for treatment. Do you understand? The main essence of today's conversation is for us to look at it from both sides. The court of public opinion and what people perceive, and the legal angle, and also from the hospital's angle as well. So let's start with you, Otumba. Why do medical negligence cases in Nigeria often drag on for years? What are the procedural gaps, and what are the systemic weaknesses that contribute to this, and what reforms could realistically speed up justice?
I think, first of all, the misconception in Nigeria is that medical malpractice cases should get to court. It's only poorly handled malpractice cases that get to court. Malpractice cases ought to end at the doorstep into the courtroom. But because of the way we handle cases here, we make it unsettleable in court. All over the world, malpractice cases are settled. That's why we have
without getting involved.
That's why we have professional indemnity insurance.
Without having to go to court.
Yeah, you complain, you lay your complaint, and then the practitioner involved or the hospital involved finds a way of settling the dispute. Now, what we have here is that we are too eager to trend or too eager for public opinion that we take it to the court of public opinion and make it unsettleable. Majority of cases ought to be settled at the doorstep into the courtroom.
But when you say that, how do you determine what settlement is?
Now,
if, for instance, somebody has lost a family or a loved one, and it's not the fault of the hospital, but the fault of one practitioner in that hospital, how do you compensate for the
hospital is the employer.
Okay, so the hospital will
my driver is outside there. If he hits your Rolls Royce, they're going to call me, aren't you? So the hospital will be liable for the errors, omissions, or commissions of those whom it has employed.
Okay, how do you determine what the settlement should be?
Yeah, so for example, if I cut the wrong leg, and yes, my regulators can suspend my license. They can sanction me. They can even strike my name from the register of doctors. But I should be able to compensate you.
What would the compensation
now, compensation could be giving you a prosthetic leg. I am paying for pain and suffering. I'm covering whatever expenses you've incurred. You understand my point? Now, how does that happen? That only happens when I, as a practitioner, I have what is called professional indemnity insurance. So when I've goofed, I'm supposed to be able to deploy my insurance to right that wrong.
Is that something that all doctors and all doctors and hospitals must
in the law
before they practice? Before
it's in the law. Yes, practice. You're supposed to have professional indemnity insurance, so it's supposed to cover you. So if you cannot, if you cannot drive from Lagos to Asaba in a vehicle that is uninsured, why would an uninsured hands open your skull?
Yeah, but I'm curious. How do you even quantify the loss of a life? What if it's somebody that is the caretaker of his family, like a man, for instance, who everything from his wife and his children he takes care.
He's a breadwinner. He's a breadwinner.
How do you determine how much compensation his family should get if he dies under the
well, it's subjective. You look at his earnings, you look at the amount he's feeding and things like that. Then you try to quantify. Then eventually you reach a middle ground.
Okay.
You understand my point? You reach a middle ground. What has happened here over the years is that we are too adversarial. Whereby, yes, you want to get to court, you get my point. Then again, with the error we make as lawyers, which I'm part of them, is that, then I go and sue for 10 billion naira. Then the doctor says, all my entire life, my assets, if you sell me and my family, I don't have 10 billion. I would rather just
think that people
let me just run the process in the court and then we take forever. Because at times we are unreasonable in our claims, right? So you can't say 10 billion naira for the death of an 84-year-old.
Yeah.
You get my point? Then, so where am I going to get the money from? So I would rather just write on the process. But instead of that, I've done so many cases that apologies have settled.
I don't know whether apology is strong enough for the loss of a life.
There are times, you see, it's not only loss of life.
Painful experience.
It's not only loss of life that gets to be cases.
I know.
You get my point.
Extreme cases.
And there are even times whereby patients die, and by virtue of how the hospital or the doctors have handled it, the patient's family is thanking you for what you've done. So what we've seen is at times is poor communication from hospitals or doctors or caregivers and families of relatives. People at times say, no, I know the doctor made an error, but they tried.
Okay.
You get my point? So at times it's the attitude, at times it's poor communication,
Okay.
at times it is we lawyers that over-litigate it.
Okay. Like on screen now, we can see the case of a lady called Aisha who eventually died because a pair of scissors, as you can see there, was left inside her after her surgical operation. So are there legal, let me ask you, Dr. Collins, are there legal consequences for hospital that delay or deny medical reports? Because I've heard of instances where they've actually openly admitted error, and then when it now comes to bringing the reports, they're a bit hesitant to stick by what was said. Do you understand? So what practical steps can family take early on to protect evidence and strengthen their case?
Well, for starters, every hospital owes...
No, before you go, let's also discuss this Aisha's thing. If she was a client of yours, how would you approach it? Then you can now answer my question.
Well, the thing is the first thing is to write to the relevant hospital, try to find out what happened. Get a lawyer, very important.
Imagine a pair of scissors being forgotten inside.
So you get a lawyer, and then of course, there are, just like he stated, there are
parameters.
There are regulatory agencies that are supposed to deal with things like this. So first, there has to be pathology to find out the actual cause of death, even though from what we can see, it's obvious. There was scissors. So this is more like a case of
Yeah.
So the facts
speak for itself.
For itself. And then, of course, usually there's an inquest, and then you can sue. The challenge with the medical negligence process in Nigeria is that there are no, like you said, ad hoc or short-term measures to deal with things like this. Most times people tend to want to go to court. And then, of course, the amount of damages that you ask for also makes most of the hospitals unwilling to quickly resolve it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have the medical and dental practitioners tribunal that also deals with matters like this. The only challenge I have with them is that the process is too long.
Yes, the process is so long.
There is no time frame. And I think that there should be a time frame for dealing with things like this. I don't see why it should not end in like 90 or 120 days. If the evidence is like this one you've pointed out, it's obvious what happened. So the people who were responsible should immediately be dealt with. And then if there are other processes that need to take place, then they will need to they will take place. And that includes, of course, if there is need to go to the hospital. But I think that we've gotten to a point where we should have administrative ways of dealing with things like this instead of going to court. Because the legal process takes time. And for me, I find it very unsettling when you have people that have suffered loss or injury, and then you keep them in court for 10 years, 15 years on a matter that can easily be resolved. So I think it's an important area I think the government needs to act upon to see how they can, have maybe a law that would make it easier to address issues like this, issues of medical negligence.
Okay. Let me ask you, Otumba, when a patient suffers harm, because there's always this controversy of who is right or who is wrong, do you understand? And most times the loved ones of the victim, if they're not in the medical field, they may not be able to present their case as strongly as they should. Or maybe because of lack of knowledge, they don't know how to, define that their loved one has been wrongfully treated. So when a patient suffers harm or dies, how does the law distinguish between unavoidable medical outcome and medical negligence? Because sometimes maybe really the patient would have died regardless. But how do you distinguish between professionalism and lack of it?
One of the salient doctrines we have in medical law is informed consent. Now, informed consent is when I tell you that you're going to have this particular procedure. These are the risks involved. You could bleed out, you could have an infection, you could die, you could be permanently impaired. Your situation might be worse off than how you came in, you could walk in and you're going back on a stretcher or on a wheelchair. They give you the entire gamut of what you're about to embark upon in a language that the patient understands. So when you have explained that to the patient, and then the outcome is still negative, the patient is simply reminded that the doctors have told me earlier on that I might have an infection. So so now I'm having a fever and they're battling it while he has an infection. Or he's bleeding, or, he's actually come down, he's actually doing worse. They've told us already before. It wasn't 100%, and there are no guarantees in medicine. Right? So when something like that happens, essentially you have basically reminded the patient of what you had told him earlier. Where that doctors goof at times is when they fail to give informed consent.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, ma'am.
To bring up the Chimamanda situation.
Yes.
Do you think that they were also told about what could happen? Like you just said, that before you approach on any patient, you have to tell the family, these are A, B, C, D, E might happen. In Chimamanda's case, with her son's scenario, do you think the hospital warned them of the repercussions?
I can't assume until you begin to investigate.
Okay.
It is investigation.
But do you think they should have, even if...
They should have.
Okay.
So it is the investigation now that it is from the investigation that we will see from the case notes if informed consent was given. So, but if he didn't give informed consent, then something happened. They say, oh, yeah, he has an infection by virtue of this procedure we gave. Then you're given an excuse.
Okay, let me ask you. So I want to go back to that situation, case again. So if you were the doctor that was in charge of that case,
yes,
what would you have done before you commenced operation?
You would have given total...
What are the...
Okay, now, but there's also a conflict, though.
Okay.
The Nigerian law also says that if you see that the patient or the patient's relatives do not have the mental capacity or psychological makeup to take or absorb the news you're giving, you are allowed to whittle it down. That's why in Nigeria...
Yeah, there must be a language that you can use for...
That's why in Nigeria, they don't tell you, oh, your cancer is really serious. They're going to die in 2 days, in 2 weeks' time. They will still give you... You understand? But go to America, they will tell you, you have 18 days to live. You understand? Because their law allowed. But in Nigeria, our practitioners can hide under that gamut. That this patient doesn't have the mental...
But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still say.
But you should say as much as you can.
Yes.
Yes, you should say as much as you can.
That's why I asked that in Chimamanda's case, if you were the doctor handling that case, what would you have told them before you commenced?
It's expected to have told them at least, reasonable extent of what could happen.
What could happen in such a situation? What are the odds?
Death, infection, patients could react.
No, because each one has different...
patients could react. So just like even ordinary blood transfusion.
Or giving anesthesia.
Yeah, that is even worse.
Risks.
Because in that instance, for example, you can forget to breathe. You understand my point? So
you can be given anesthesia and you forget to breathe.
You can die from anesthesia.
What would cause that, though?
Various things can cause it. There are times that it might even take an autopsy to realize that you are even allergic to certain. You understand my point? So that's why they ask questions at times. So you might not know. A lot of us here growing up took certain medications and started itching. You wouldn't know that you will react to it until you took that medication. Right? So some people eat certain things and then their mouth swell up or they have...
What are the chances of people stop breathing being given
anesthesia? What are the chances? Anesthesia. Well... What are the chances? That's where at times people offer to take local anesthesia and not go totally under.
Yeah, not go general.
You understand my point?
In the case where the child was just 21 months old, what would have been the best way to approach it? Local or...
It depends on that is why in this particular...
But you know the case now. You know the case.
Yeah, but in this particular one, it is the investigation that will unearth everything. You understand my point? I have seen instances where, even I as a child, falling ill, they've had reasons to gather 5 strong men to put me down before they can inject me with a...
But that doesn't mean they'll give you an overdose.
I'm just saying. But if you do that now in Nigeria, and even if they did that then, the needle could have, could break, whatever could happen, you understand? But so it is when we now open this particular, it's like opening an onion. right? When you unearth it, then begin to see different things. But for this particular one, we can't say decisively. You understand my point? Until there.
Exactly what.
And the only two ways in which it is done, either an inquest is done or the matter goes for investigation at MDCN.
Okay. Let me ask Collins. Now, I noticed that a lot of doctors have been hesitant to come and air their views on this particular Chimamanda's case. And generally, there's a sort of code of silence. Doctors are a bit hesitant to draw attention to whatever flaw another hospital is being accused of. So why do they hesitate to speak out about medical errors? Because medical errors do occur. And then what legal protections exist for those who report wrongdoing or testify in court? If, for instance, a hospital is being charged of for medical negligence and a staff of that hospital wants to add credibility to that accusation, what protects him? What legal protection does he have? Well,
I'll start with why doctors are hesitant to testify against colleagues. It's obvious, as in, the backlash. You don't want to be seen to be the one who is putting down.
Yeah, but the safety of life should far outweigh that.
Yes, but it's a very dicey issue, especially when you don't have all the facts. So and that's why I think most times there's this deference to the Medical and Dental Practitioners Council, because when you go there, the people there are professionals, so they can speak as professionals. But you find out that most doctors are very hesitant to come on TV because they don't have all the facts before them, to make a determination.
But can't you give general answers? As if this goes wrong, this might happen.
But then again, you don't want to be seen by your colleagues as being trying to put them down or trying to run down another medical practitioner.
Even though the code that they represent, the code of honor amongst doctors, far outweigh.
Yes, it depends on it all depends on the context, So if it's to go on the news or on TV to discuss it generally, I think there's a bit of hesitation among doctors to do that. But I know that I've seen a couple of them testify before the Medical and Dental Council against colleagues. So I don't want to take the position that doctors don't like to testify, but I think that they are a bit hesitant to do it in public because they're also worried about the reputation of the professionals, and the reputation of the hospital. Especially now that we have brain drain and medical financing is a challenge. Yes, medical finance is a challenge. So I'm not aware there's any legal framework that kind of protects. I'm not aware of that. I don't know if my colleague is aware of any legal framework that kind of protects medical doctors who report incidents of medical malpractice within the hospital.
But shouldn't there be?
There should be.
Because I think that there should be encouraged enough to speak out if they see misdemeanor. Because
I believe so.
In the field of medicine, misdemeanor can equal life or death. It can be between life and death.
In fact, I take the position that even when people don't suffer any injury or death, there should be a framework that allows hospitals to report incidents.
Because there could also be long-term damages.
Yes, so that other doctors can also learn from those errors. But unfortunately, I don't think we've developed a legal framework to that level where there is an obligation on doctors and hospitals to report any incident at all.
But do you think there should be a legal body specially designed to handle medical cases?
Yes, we already have the Medical and Dental. I'm not sure whether.
No, but did they have any legal authority to execute punishment or sanctions?
Yes, they can withdraw your license. They can suspend you. What I think they can do is to award compensation. But they can discipline a medical practitioner. And then, of course, the federal and state governments also have legal frameworks for closing down hospitals, withdrawing licenses as well, when you don't meet the basic standards for setting up a hospital.
Anyway,
if I may chip into that.
Okay, quickly, because we're going on a break.
It's like you're fighting Muhammad Ali, but you're handcuffed. Their rule says that I can't talk as a doctor when he has made an allegation against me. Because if I talk, there is no way in which I will not disclose patient information. There is no way in which I will not breach his confidentiality. Yeah. There's no way in which I will not breach data protection.
No, but when you're faced with court sanctions, you have to do what you need to do.
No, you can't. So you can only talk at the appropriate forum. So you cannot call any hospital whom you have alleged that is negligent now, if they will be so stupid to come on a rise, for example, and say, oh, this is what happened. The patient had malaria. We treated him. You get that kind of thing.
We're going on the break. I would like to follow up on that question, but we're going on the break.
No problem.
See you right back soon on Perspectives. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Perspectives. Let's dive right back in. You know, Otoma, Collins was talking about the issue of talking, or rather you were talking about the issue of doctors not being able to talk because of confidentiality of the patient. But when you are now in court, you would have no choice but to open. First and foremost, who can you talk to? Who can you not talk to? When would you now open up?
You're only expected to talk when you are having discussions, when you're having inquiries with the regulators.
Okay, but you can't talk to journalists or anything
You can't talk to journalists. Even yesterday, I still got a letter from a client of mine. The newspaper wrote, there's an allegation against your hospital. Please respond. I said, you can't respond. Because if you say that the patient was a 55-year-old pregnant woman, you have disclosed patient confidentiality. You say the patient came in with HIV, you have disclosed patient confidentiality. And then you have worse information, you have worse charges or additional charges on your head. Right? So they are not, the only place where you can talk is Medical and Theatre Council, Ministry of Health, through her farmer in Lagos State. The police can call you, you can talk. If you are in court, you can talk. But you cannot come to Perspective now and say, okay, this is the patient's case file. When she came in, she was having blood pressure. This was her pulse. You know that, and then the whole world is saying.
That brings me to my next question. Can a single incident bring a hospital down? What is a hospital with a strong safety record? Can it bring it down? And have courts ever prioritized keeping an institution operational over a patient's right to justice when we're in such a case?
Well, we have had instances. First of all, an average case, there's hardly a case I've done whereby practitioners haven't reformed themselves because of the harrowing experience they've gone through. It's quite traumatic. There's what is called medical malpractice stress syndrome, where doctors who have gone through cases, particularly those who have even come out of it innocent, totally have an aversion for medicine. Totally want, at times, even avoid seeing patients. Some of them go to administration, some of them go to work with HMOs, some of them even shut down practices, that the patient I'm doing all my best to save has put me through this harrowing experience. I don't want to repeat it. So it is actually counterproductive. Whereby I have a lot of them who sell their practices, who, shut down.
Because they couldn't, the scandal really.
Because the scandal, the trauma of what we have charged them and all, you understand, and all that, and they spent months or years, handling these cases, having a monkey on their shoulders. They can't move on until this case is dispensed with. They've eventually dispensed with, but they have seen 55-year-old doctors in Nigeria moving to New Zealand. By virtue of the fact they can't work again in Nigeria, they can't handle Nigerian patients. So we are having that now. Another thing we are going to have is that we're going to have defensive medicine. Before you sue me now, I'm going to ensure that you go through all tests possible. What ordinarily I could have given you by just observing you and say, oh, this child is done this. I'll say, oh, go and do this test, go and do that test in order to avoid allegations of negligence. What will happen? Prices of healthcare will increase. When I don't need an MRI, I say go and do an MRI so that I can be doubly sure. That was what started huge wave of cesarean sessions in the early 80s, where doctors in America were being sued for delivery per vagina. Okay, no problem now. Any woman that has a cough, CS. Any little discomfort, CS. And it made prices escalate. That is what will happen here if we continue to hound them.
Yeah,
it's almost inevitable.
No, but you say hound as if some of these doctors are not guilty as charged.
Guilty ones should be sanctioned. I have no aversion to. They must be sanctioned. Guilty ones should be sanctioned.
So you don't think the hospital should be the one? I'll get to you soon, Collins. You don't think the hospital should be the one that should be sanctioned? It should be the individual doctor or medical practitioner that should be sanctioned rather than the hospital?
The law has a way of dealing with practitioners even at the point of investigation, if you exhibit so much ignorance, they have the power to interimly suspend your license.
The practitioner or the hospital?
The practitioner.
Okay.
Now, with respect to the hospital, he said it earlier, the government can shut it down. We mentioned it earlier. We can actually make them pay, compensate the victim of the wrongful, treatment. You understand my point? But when we have a whirlwind, you understand, of allegations against every hospital possible, these are the effects we will have, which is, for example, doctors have aversions to treat patients. We will have defensive medicine whereby hospitals will just be seeing, go and do this test, go and do that test, and it's just because they want to avoid that ordinarily what you would have overlooked. Then they start treating you for that fracture that you came for. Then they start treating you for malaria too. Start treating you you get that kind of thing because they cover the entire field. What has happened? They are bombarding you with bills, bombarding you with tests, bombarding you with huge costs because they're trying to avoid. You understand? Because normally they could do what we call triage, which is the most important one here. He has a toothache, but he has a heart condition as well, or he's bleeding. Which one do we treat first? You get my point? Let's treat the most important one. We can deal with the whitlow later. But when you're trying to avoid being sued, you cover everything. What does that mean? At that point in time, that patient will pay through his nose.
Okay, let me ask Collins, because, with this, you've had people coming out with their own complaints about medical negligence. There's some who have said that, they've lost the use of their voice because they were not well treated. And you've also had, not just, there have been people, other patients that have come out to complain about medical negligence. Also, there have also been other people from other hospitals who have also come out to make their own complaints known to the public forum. I think this is what is happening during this whole imbroglio. So I want to ask, now, how best can hospitals handle issues like this? What do you think that they need to do more to clear the air better and to control the narrative?
I think they need to be a bit more open in dealing with things like this and not be evasive. Because the challenge most times is that when things like this happen, most hospitals become very evasive. They, rather than engage the patients, they begin to run away from the patients. In fact, you see incidents where they begin to doctor reports and alter all kinds of things, just so that they can
doctor the original report.
Yes,
so that
things, kinds of funny things.
Seen that happen?
Yes. So we've seen incidents like that. So rather than engage and be open about it, so if there is informed consent, because to be honest with you, the nature of medicine is such that it comes with a lot of risk. It doesn't matter how small the ailment is. It could result in injury, it could result in death. And if there is informed consent and you've done what you ought to do, then and things don't go well, you should be open about it and engage the patients or the families of the patients. But when you become invasive, that is where you see some of the patients or families of the patient become also, aggressive. And this whole thing about pulling down the hospital now begins to happen. I know of a case, I don't want to disclose the parties, where when the incident happened, we approached the hospital for settlement. And they were reluctant to do so.
They were?
Yes, they refused to settle.
But did they even acknowledge that they were at fault in the first place?
It was obvious. But they refused to settle. And because they refused to settle, we now decided to deploy everything we had.
And what happened?
Of course, the hospital had to close down.
Oh, they closed down?
Yes.
Wow.
So the thing is to be as transparent as possible. Because they are human beings. You're dealing with human beings. If something didn't go well, be honest enough to say, we did our best. It just didn't go well. And then, when you do that, you now give the families of the patients the opportunity to now weigh it and decide if it's something they want to pursue. So I think that's where the challenge is.
Let me ask you, Dr. Otumba, have you encountered cases where an outcome felt legally correct but ethically uncomfortable?
No, several.
Could you give instances?
Yes, several. Without disclosing the identity of patients. There are several cases whereby, yes, The doctor was doing his best. While doing his best, he crossed the line.
When you say cross the line, what do you mean
Okay.
exactly?
How will I say this without people knowing what I'm talking about? Let's say, for example, the patient needed urgent attention. He had already stabilized the patient,
Yes.
but he needed to escalate the patient to a tertiary institution, knowing fully well that he couldn't handle it where he was. So he had to, in quote, use the letterhead of another institution, which would allow that tertiary institution to easily admit and give that patient proper attention.
Okay.
By the time that was done, eventually they found out that the doctor doctored the paper, that kind of thing. And he actually got his license revoked. Wow. But, while doing the right thing. So I've had instances as well where doctors, I can't even mention it happened in lawsuit, where doctors were even the ones, giving blood to save a patient who was dying practically because they didn't have money, family didn't have money or whatever, and they were, even raising funds and all. Patient dies. The man who didn't have money to buy medication for his wife, where the doctors had to raise funds, to assist, was able to get a senior advocate of Nigeria to sue that hospital.
Wow.
So they're asking, you had money to get a senior advocate, but you didn't have money to pay for, to save your wife. So those are the kind of things that we find at times. So I tell people, doctors I train, that it is the patient that are most benevolent to, that could mess you up. So it is the patient that you have gone far, and above for. It is the patient whom you are treating without. There's one that is happening right now. Federal Medical Center. Patient not registered in the hospital. Was rushed there, heavily pregnant, due. Not a registered patient, was due for delivery. And she was rushed to the Federal Medical Center. And they accepted to treat. The woman died. The husband is suing. He was not a registered patient. But they just said, let us save life. You understand my point? So if at that point in time, that was people that said, but you're not a registered patient, what would have happened? You get my point? But so that also, those are also part of the challenges. With respect to settlement as well. When we look at something on top that is uneven, you look under first to see why is that platform not even. Where we've gotten it wrong, first of all, is with insurance, professional indemnity insurance.
Yeah, very important.
Extremely important. However, our insurance people too need to do the needful. Our insurance practitioners, only very few of them are paying settlement. Some of them will insist on paying settlement only after you have been indicted. So you had the case. You approach the hospital, you have messed up, we are claiming 25 naira. The insurance company is telling the hospital, until we get a court judgment,
you will not pay.
That you are messed up, we are not going to pay. But a proactive insurance company should pay so that that doctor can avoid being labeled as a negligent practitioner.
Okay, we are going on another break. And grab a cup of tea, as I always say, and see you right back on Perspectives.
See you
soon. Welcome back to Perspectives. Let's dive right in. Collins, I want to ask you about the underlying factor of this whole issue. Japa, us losing good quality doctors to foreign shores. Do you understand? So with skilled doctors leaving the country and hospitals becoming understaffed, can workforce shortages ever be a legal defense for doctors? And what practical steps should hospitals take to reduce risk when resources are limited? Because this lack of good quality doctors, it's very prominent. It's very prevailing in the medical system.
Yeah,
so what can hospitals do to address this issue?
Medical insurance is one way. Just ensure that their doctors are insured and their facilities are insured. But for me, I think it's a very worrying. I was looking at the statistics, and we have over about 1,800 private facilities and about 300 government facilities. I'm just wondering where they're going to get the doctors to put in those facilities. So it's a huge issue. In fact, I've had doctors call me and say, why are you people all over the place trying to bring down hospitals and doctors? It's counterproductive because one is that you're encouraging more doctors to leave the country, and at the same time you're discouraging people from investing in the health sector. And I say, I understand, but the point is that should not be the reason why we should stop.
Have to tolerate
yes.
incompetence.
So the key thing is to balance it. So
how do you balance it, though?
Well, hospitals doing what they ought to do. The funny thing is that most times the hospitals that run into some of these issues are very big hospitals that should know, or that are better positioned to even provide some of the facilities that we're talking about. Like I know the case we handled, the hospital was conducting surgeries, they didn't have CT scans, they didn't have blood banks and all that. So you're asking yourself, this is a very big hospital, why don't they have these facilities?
But you're even talking about it, because what about the small rural hospitals?
I'm using these big...
That the average man can afford.
Yes, so I'm using these big hospitals to just make the case that,
Yeah, if you're going to pay premium,
yes,
might as well get best services.
So it's a balancing act, but I think we ought to find a way to ensure that everybody... Yes, so and I think that's where regulation comes in. Government needs to ensure that they do what they're supposed to do. I know Lagos State has a very robust legal framework. What I don't know is the amount of capacity they have, looking at the number of health facilities we have in Lagos. So it's to ensure that, they are properly regulated, they're monitored, sure that they have the right facilities. And then for the hospitals themselves to do what they ought to do.
I think the welfare of doctors too also have to be looked into. Because
yes,
that's
also another issue.
Why they leave in the first place.
And training as well.
And training, yes.
Training as well, because you also have, sometimes when you see some of the new doctors we produce, you ask yourself, where are these ones?
And it's funny because if you're expecting premium service, I'm sure people that can afford rich hospitals would also are prepared to pay premium prices.
Yes.
In other words, if you're a knowledgeable hospital and you've been in this industry for 20, 30, 40 years and you've earned a strong reputation, I think the welfare of your doctors primarily should be addressed.
Yeah.
So that at any given time, even if they feel tempted to go abroad, when they look at what is being offered to them here,
they want to stay.
They would want to stay because I think the disparity between what doctors earn abroad and what doctors earn here is still too.
But again,
too
I also
wide.
tell some doctors, you're running abroad, the standards they are higher. You can't do some of the things you do here abroad, and the consequences are even more severe.
Yeah, but the expectations are higher. The expectations are higher.
So,
let me quickly address another question. The case of Code of Medical Ethics, refusal of accepting patients when they come to your doorstep. Do hospitals not owe it to the Code of Medical Ethics to accept this people rather than turn them back? Because I've heard of instances where they refuse them here, they go from here, go from there, go from there. At the end of the day, they end up dying.
Yeah,
which could have been avoided.
Several legislations, National Health Act, Code of Medical Ethics, even the Road Safety Code, says patients in need of emergency care should not be refused treatment for whatever reason.
But it happens. They refuse.
For whatever reason. Now, what happens is this. A patient with a gunshot in the head comes into a dental facility. What can a dentist give him?
No, but if you go to a proper hospital,
so if you go I'm going somewhere. Two, a patient is brought in and then the hospital treats. Who pays? There's a law that says 1% of consolidated revenue funds should go for patients in emergency care. It has never been implemented.
Yeah.
What the law that says what?
That 1% of consolidated revenue fund should go.
Health.
Okay.
Now, so what do they do? What a smart hospital will do is if they bring a patient in need of emergency care to you, stabilize that patient and refer.
Oh, okay.
Stabilize meaning bandage, iodine.
Immediately treat what is the issue.
Treat
to a certain
extent and refer to what we call a multidisciplinary center. Refer from Laolu Hospital to Lut.
Okay, good. Can you sue a hospital if they refuse you with this law in grant?
It's actually a crime to refuse.
Yeah. Okay. And I hope our listeners...
It's actually a crime to refuse treatment of emergency Emergency means that it is obvious that this person will die
If you're not
or
Okay.
if he's not treated.
I'm happy that you've brought that up, because that means our listeners can know that you can sue a hospital if they refuse you, reject you at the doorstep. Thank you so much, Collins. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Laolu. Otumba. Laolu. Thank you so much for your intelligent and very deep view of what we've discussed today. Today's discussion has shown that while medical negligence is complex, justice is possible. We hope this conversation empowers families with knowledge and encourages healthcare institutions to uphold accountability as a foundation for safer and more reliable care. That's all we have time for today. You're watching Perspectives here on Arise News with me, Osanyin. Until same time next week, do stay safe and have a great time. Thank you.